3 days after the tournament, Isabella sat in her living room, still feeling the phantom weight of armor on her shoulders. The hospital had kept her overnight for observation, and the doctors had confirmed what everyone already knew. She had come very close to a much more serious outcome. Her oxygen levels had dropped to dangerous levels, and without David's quick thinking, the story could have ended very differently. The local news had picked up the story, calling it a medieval rescue in modern times. Isabella found herself uncomfortable with the attention, but she was grateful that the coverage focused on the heroic actions of David and the other festival participants who had helped save her life. Her phone had been ringing constantly since she returned home. Fellow armor enthusiasts from around the country were calling to check on her and to discuss safety modifications for their own equipment. The medieval reenactment community was tight-knit, and news of the accident had spread quickly through online forums and social media groups. But the call Isabella was most looking forward to came on Wednesday afternoon. David's voice was warm and familiar when she answered the phone. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Really feeling. Not just the polite answer you're probably giving everyone else." Isabella smiled, appreciating his directness. "Honestly, I'm scared," she admitted. "I keep thinking about how helpless I felt in those moments when I couldn't breathe. I've always prided myself on being independent, on solving my own problems. But there was nothing I could do." "That's completely normal," David said. "You went through a traumatic experience. Have you thought about talking to someone about it?" They talked for over an hour. David shared that the experience had affected him too. He had been replaying those critical moments in his mind, wondering if he could have worked faster, if there was something else he could have done. Isabella reassured him that he had been amazing under pressure, but she understood the weight he was carrying. "I've been thinking," Isabella said as their conversation wound down. "I want to do something to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Would you be interested in working together on some kind of safety protocol for medieval reenactment?" David was immediately interested. The experience had shown him how unprepared the medical community was for this type of emergency. Most paramedics and emergency room doctors had never seen medieval armor, let alone understood how it functioned. Over the following weeks, Isabella and David began collaborating on a comprehensive safety guide for historical reenactment events. Isabella provided the technical knowledge about armor construction and common failure points, while David contributed medical expertise about the physiological dangers and emergency response procedures. Their first meeting took place at Isabella's workshop, where she showed David the armor that had nearly trapped her. She had been reluctant to enter the space at first, but David's presence made it easier. "This is where it all started," Isabella said, running her hand along her workbench. 2 years of research, planning, and crafting. I was so focused on historical accuracy and perfect fit that I never considered what would happen if something went wrong. David examined the armor pieces carefully. "The craftsmanship is incredible," he said, "but you're right about the safety issues. The very things that make it authentic, the tight fit, the complex harness system, are what created the danger." Together, they identified several modifications that could be made to tournament armor without sacrificing historical accuracy. Quick-release mechanisms hidden inside traditional-looking buckles, pressure points that would prevent chess pieces from compressing too tightly, emergency access panels that would allow rapid removal in crisis situations. Isabella's attitude toward her hobby began to evolve. She still loved medieval history and the craftsmanship involved in creating authentic armor, but she now understood the importance of balancing authenticity with safety. She began designing a new suit of armor that incorporated the safety modifications they had developed. David found that the experience had clarified his career goals. He had always been interested in emergency medicine, but the armor incident had shown him how much he enjoyed problem-solving under pressure and working with unusual medical situations. He began focusing his studies on emergency medicine with a specialization in trauma response. Their safety guide was published 6 months after the tournament, both as a printed manual and as an online resource. The medieval reenactment community embraced it enthusiastically. and several major festivals began requiring safety certifications based on Isabella and David's protocols. Isabella returned to competition the following year, wearing her new armor and carrying a small tool specifically designed for emergency armor removal. She had lost none of her skill or passion for the sport, but she now approached it with a healthy respect for the risks involved. More importantly, she had gained something she hadn't expected: a deep friendship with David and a new understanding of the strength that comes from accepting help from others. The independent streak that had driven her to create her masterpiece in solitude had given way to an appreciation for collaboration and community. David, meanwhile, had discovered that his calling lay not just in traditional emergency medicine, but in preparing for the unexpected situations that textbooks never covered. The armor rescue had taught him that the most challenging medical emergencies often required thinking outside conventional protocols. On the first anniversary of the tournament incident, Isabella and David met at the same festival where everything had happened. Isabella was competing again, wearing her new safety-modified armor. David was there as a volunteer medic, but also as a friend supporting Isabella's return to competition. As Isabella prepared for her first match, David helped her check all the safety releases they had developed together. The process took only a few extra minutes, but it gave both of them peace of mind. "Are you nervous?" David asked as Isabella put on her helmet. "A little," Isabella admitted, "but I'm not letting fear keep me from doing what I love. Besides, I know you'll be watching." Isabella won her first match easily, her new armor performing flawlessly. As she raised her sword in victory, she looked toward the medical station where David was watching with a proud smile. The tournament continued without incident, but the real victory had happened long before the first sword was drawn. Two people had faced an impossible situation and found a way through it together. They had taken their shared trauma and transformed it into something that would help protect others. In the months that followed, Isabella and David continued to collaborate on safety research and remain close friends. The armor that had nearly killed Isabella now sat in her workshop as a reminder, not of fear, but of the incredible things that can happen when people work together in moments of crisis. Isabella had learned that true strength wasn't about facing challenges alone, but about building the relationships and systems that help everyone face challenges together. And David had discovered that sometimes the most important medical knowledge isn't found in textbooks, but in the willingness to think creatively and act decisively when lives hang in the balance. Their story became legend in the medieval reenactment community, not just as a cautionary tale about safety, but as an inspiring example of how crisis can bring out the best in people and lead to lasting positive change. The abandoned mining tunnel smelled like rust and old rock, but it was hidden and safe. Elena helped the injured alien sit down on a flat boulder near the entrance. In the dim light from her flashlight, she could see that the being's condition was getting worse. Its breathing was shallow, and the strange suit it wore kept sparking and making worried beeping sounds. Elena had brought her first aid kit, but she quickly realized it was useless. How do you treat injuries on a being that doesn't even have the same body structure as humans? The alien's arm was clearly broken, but it bent in places where human arms don't have joints. The green liquid she had seen at the crash site was apparently its blood, and it was still leaking from several wounds. "I don't know how to help you," Elena said out loud. Feeling helpless, "I'm not a doctor, and even if I was, I don't know anything about your body." The alien looked at her with those large, dark eyes and somehow projected calm feelings into her mind. It was trying to reassure her, even though it was the one who was hurt. Then it did something that amazed Elena. It placed its good hand on its damaged suit and pressed a hidden button. The suit began to change. Parts of it shifted and rearranged themselves, like it was alive. Small mechanical arms emerged from the chest area and began working on the alien's injuries. Elena watched in fascination as the suit diagnosed the problems and started making repairs to its wearer's body. But the suit was damaged too. It kept stopping its work and flashing red warning lights. The alien projected more images into Elena's mind. showing her that the suit needed certain materials to complete the healing process. Some of these materials existed on Earth, but finding them would require help. Elena thought about Dr. David Chen, a biochemist she had worked with on a project 2 years ago. He was brilliant, curious, and most importantly, he could keep secrets. If anyone could help figure out what the alien needed, it would be David. But how could she possibly explain this situation to him? The next morning, Elena drove back to her research station, leaving the alien hidden in the mining tunnel with water and some human food. She wasn't sure if it could eat Earth food, but it had seemed grateful for the offering dot at her station. Elena tried to act normal while her mind raced with everything that had happened. She made coffee, checked her emails, and pretended to work on her pottery analysis. But all she could think about was the injured being hiding in the desert around noon. She called David at his laboratory in San Diego. Her hands were shaking as she dialed his number. "David, it's Elena. I need your help with something unusual." "Elena, good to hear from you. What kind of unusual? Did you find something interesting at your dig site?" Elena had prepared a story. "I found some strange mineral samples that are showing bizarre properties. They seem to have some kind of biological components, but unlike anything I've seen before. Could you come out here and take a look? I'll pay for your travel expenses." David was intrigued. He had always been curious about unusual discoveries, and Elena's dig site was in a region known for unique geological formations. He agreed to drive out the next day, while she waited for David to arrive. Elena spent more time with the alien. She learned that its name was something that sounded like Kethmer. When she tried to pronounce it in her head, it had been some kind of military leader, though not in the way humans understood military structures. Kethmer began showing Elena images of its home world. It was beautiful, but very different from Earth. The cities floated above the ground, connected by streams of light. The people lived much longer than humans and had technologies that seemed like magic. But there were problems too. Their society was divided between those who wanted to explore and learn from other worlds, and those who believed other species should be controlled or eliminated. Kethmer had been part of a mission to study Earth, but when it learned about the true plans for humanity, it had tried to stop them. That's why its own people had shot down its ship. It was now a refugee from its own species. The most shocking revelation came when Kethmer showed Elena that its people had been watching Earth. For many years, they had been studying humans, learning about their strengths and weaknesses, preparing for something big. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "Are they coming here?" she asked. Kethmer's response was a mix of images and emotions that Elena interpreted as yes, but not yet. There was still time, but not much. That's why Kethmer was willing to share its technology with Elena. Humanity needed to be prepared for what was coming. When David arrived the next day, Elena was nervous but determined. She led him to the mining tunnel, trying to prepare him for what he was about to see. "David, before we go in there, I need you to promise me something. Whatever you see today, you can't tell anyone else about it without my permission. This is bigger than anything either of us has ever encountered." David looked concerned. "Elena, you're scaring me a little. What exactly did you find out here? Just promise me," Elena insisted. David nodded. "Okay, I promise. But if this is dangerous." "It's not dangerous," Elena said. "It's just unprecedented." She led him into the tunnel. Kethmer was waiting for them, looking much better after 2 days of treatment from its self-repairing suit. But David's reaction was exactly what Elena had expected. He stopped walking, stared for a long moment, then sat down hard on a rock. That's not human," he whispered. "No, it's not," Elena confirmed. "David, meet Kethmer. It needs our help for the next hour." Elena explained everything while David tried to process what he was seeing. Kethmer helped by projecting images directly into David's mind, showing him the same visions of advanced technology and looming threats that Elena had seen. David was a scientist first and foremost. Once he got over the initial shock, his curiosity took over. He began asking questions about Kethmer's biology, its technology, and its healing process. Kefmer's suit was running low on several key elements it needed to complete the healing. David recognized some of them as rare earth metals that could be found in certain Chilean mines. Others were more common, but would need to be synthesized in a laboratory. "I can get these materials," David said excitedly. "Some of them I have in my lab already. The others I can order without raising suspicions." But Elena was worried about more than just healing Kefmer's injuries. Government agents had been asking questions at nearby towns. They were looking for anyone who might have seen unusual lights in the sky or heard strange sounds in the desert. So far, no one had connected the sightings to Elena's research station. But it was only a matter of time. Kefmer seemed to understand their concerns. It began sharing small pieces of its technology with them. First, it showed them how to create a simple communication device that could work over long distances without using human satellites or radio frequencies. Then it demonstrated a scanning device that could detect approaching aircraft from miles away. As the days passed, Elena found herself caught between wonder and terror. The technology Kefmer was sharing could revolutionize medicine, energy production, and transportation. But the knowledge of an approaching alien fleet cast a dark shadow over everything. She was also struggling with the weight of keeping such enormous secrets. Every time she spoke to her colleagues or friends, she felt like she was lying to them. She wanted to shout from the rooftops that humanity was not alone in the universe. But she also knew that revealing the truth could cause worldwide panic. David was having similar struggles. As a scientist, he was thrilled to be working with technology that was centuries ahead of human development. But as a human being, he was terrified of what it all meant for the future of his species. One evening, as they worked together to synthesize the materials Kefmer needed, David asked the question that had been bothering Elena for days. What happens when it's healed? Does it leave? Do we pretend this never happened? Elena looked at Kefmer, who was resting against the tunnel wall while its suit worked on repairing damaged tissue. She realized that she didn't want it to leave. In just a few days, this being from another world had become important to her, not just because of the technology it could share, but because it represented hope. Hope that intelligence and compassion could exist anywhere in the universe. But she also knew that Kefmer's presence on Earth was dangerous for everyone involved. The longer it stayed, the greater the chance that they would all be discovered. As if reading her thoughts, Kefmer projected new images into both their minds. It showed them that the approaching fleet was still months away, but advanced scouts would arrive much sooner. When that happened, Kefmer would need to make a choice. It could surrender to its own people and hope for mercy, or it could continue fighting alongside humanity. Either way, Elena and David were now part of something much bigger than themselves. They were no longer just two scientists studying rocks and chemicals in the desert. They had become humanity's first ambassadors to another world, and the decisions they made in the coming weeks could determine the fate of both species. 3 weeks had passed since Elena first found Kefmer in the desert. The alien's injuries were mostly healed now, thanks to David's help in getting the right materials for its advanced medical suit. But instead of feeling relieved, Elena found herself more worried than ever. That's because Kefmer had finally decided to tell them the complete truth about why it was really on Earth. It happened on a quiet Thursday evening. Elena and David were in the mining tunnel, working with Kefmer to understand how its scanning devices worked. The alien had been teaching them about technology that could detect objects in space from incredible distances. Elena thought it was just scientific curiosity, but she was wrong. Kefmer suddenly stopped what it was doing and looked directly at both humans. Elena felt a change in the mental connection they shared. The alien's thoughts felt heavier, sadder, and filled with something that Elena could only describe as guilt. "There's something I haven't told you," the images in Elena's mind seemed to say. "Something you need to know before it's too late." What came next was the most terrifying hour of Elena's life. Kefmer began showing them recordings from its ship's computer systems. The images were crystal clear, like watching a movie, but Elena knew they were completely real. She saw dozens of alien ships moving through space in perfect formation. She saw detailed maps of Earth with human cities marked and studied. She saw technology that could destroy entire mountains. or put whole populations to sleep. But the worst part was what she saw next. The recording showed alien facilities that had been built in secret locations on Earth. Hidden bases in the deep ocean, underground complexes in remote deserts, and monitoring stations disguised as natural rock formations. Kethmer's people hadn't just been watching Earth from space. They had been here for years, studying humanity up close. Elena's hands started shaking as she watched recordings of humans being taken from isolated areas. Not many, just a few dozen people over several years, but enough to learn everything about human biology and behavior. The people were returned to Earth with no memory of what had happened. But the aliens now knew exactly how human bodies and minds worked. This is impossible. David whispered, "If this is true, why hasn't anyone noticed?" Kethmer projected more images. It showed them how its people had been incredibly careful to avoid detection. They only took people who wouldn't be missed immediately, hikers who got lost in remote areas, sailors whose boats had mechanical problems far from shore, people who others would assume simply had accidents. But the studies weren't just about satisfying curiosity. They were preparation for something much bigger. Elena felt sick as she realized what Kethmer was trying to tell them. They're planning to invade Earth, aren't they? The aliens' response was complex. It wasn't exactly an invasion in the way humans would understand it. Kethmer's people saw themselves as advanced beings who had a responsibility to guide less developed species. In their view, humans were like children who needed supervision. The plan was to evaluate whether humanity deserved to keep Earth as their homeworld. If humans passed certain tests, they would be allowed to stay, but under alien supervision. If they failed the tests, they would be relocated to other planets where they could be more closely managed. Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. Who gave them the right to decide our fate? Kethmer's mental response was filled with shame. Its people believed that advanced civilizations had the right, even the duty, to control less advanced ones. It was a philosophy that Kethmer had once accepted without question. But everything changed when Kethmer was assigned to the Earth observation mission. The more it learned about humans, the more it began to doubt its people's approach. Humans were violent and often made poor decisions, but they were also creative, compassionate, and capable of incredible growth. The breaking point came when Kethmer discovered that the evaluation process was designed to ensure that humans would fail. The tests were impossible to pass, because Kethmer's people had already decided that Earth was too valuable to leave in human hands. I tried to change the mission from the inside, Kethmer's thoughts explained. I argued with the fleet commanders. I showed them evidence that humans could be trusted as partners, rather than subjects, but they wouldn't listen. When Kethmer tried to sabotage some of the evaluation equipment, it was discovered by security forces. The alien barely escaped in a damaged scout ship, which eventually crashed in the Chilean desert where Elena found it. Elena felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what she was learning. Not only was humanity not alone in the universe, but their entire future was being decided by beings who saw them as inferior creatures. How long do we have? David asked the question Elena was afraid to hear answered. Kethmer accessed its ship's long-range sensors. The main fleet was still several months away, but advanced scout ships were already moving into the outer regions of the solar system. In approximately 6 weeks, those scouts would begin the final phase of their evaluation. Elena felt a crushing weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She was just one person, an archaeologist who studied ancient civilizations. How could she possibly do anything to help humanity face a threat this massive? But Kethmer wasn't finished with its revelations. The alien began showing them detailed information about its people's technology, military capabilities, and strategic weaknesses. It was giving Elena and David everything they would need to help humanity defend itself. The technology was incredible. Energy shields that could protect entire cities, weapons that could disable alien ships without destroying them, communication systems that could coordinate defense efforts across the entire planet instantly. But there was a problem. The technology was so advanced that building it with Earth's current manufacturing capabilities would take years. Humanity needed time that it didn't have. Unless, Kethmer's thoughts continued, We can convince some of my people to change sides. Elena looked up sharply. What do you mean? Kethmer explained that not everyone in the alien fleet agreed with the invasion plan. Many of its people were uncomfortable with the idea of forcing an entire species to abandon their homeworld. These individuals might be willing to help if they knew there was an alternative, but contacting them would be incredibly dangerous. Kethmer was already considered a traitor by its own people. Any attempt to communicate with the fleet could result in Elena and David being targeted as well. David was pacing back and forth in the tunnel, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. We're talking about preventing an alien invasion with the help of alien rebels. 3 weeks ago, I didn't even believe in life on other planets. Elena understood how he felt. Her entire worldview had been turned upside down. But she also realized that they couldn't just pretend this wasn't happening. Millions of people were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their future was being decided by beings from another world. We have to tell someone, Elena said finally, the government, the military, someone in authority who can actually do something about this. But Kethmer's response was deeply troubling. It showed Elena images of what had happened on other worlds when alien contact was revealed to. Quickly, panic, violence, the collapse of social systems. Sometimes the revelation of alien contact did more damage than the aliens themselves. Elena found herself facing an impossible choice. Keep the secret and try to prepare for the coming crisis with just the three of them, or reveal everything and risk causing the kind of chaos that could destroy human civilization. Before the aliens even arrived, as they sat in the flickering light of the mining tunnel, Elena realized that her simple decision to help an injured alien had become something much bigger. She wasn't just hiding a refugee anymore. She was holding information that could save or doom her entire species. The weight of that responsibility was almost too much to bear. But looking at Kethmer, seeing the genuine concern in its alien features, Elena knew that they had found an ally in the most unlikely place, an enemy soldier who had become a friend, willing to risk everything to give humanity a fighting chance. The question now was whether 3 individuals, 2 human and 1 alien, could find a way to change the course of history before time ran out. The clock was ticking, and the fate of 2 worlds hung in the balance. Elena couldn't sleep for 3 days after Kethmer's revelation. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw images of alien ships surrounding Earth and humans being relocated to distant planets. Like cattle being moved to new pastures, the weight of knowing humanity's fate while everyone else lived their normal lives was crushing her. On the 4th morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She called Dr. Rebecca Torres, her former professor who now worked with NASA's Space Research Division. Rebecca had always been someone Elena could trust. And if anyone in the scientific community would listen to an impossible story, it would be her. Rebecca, I need to meet with you privately. It's about something that could affect the entire planet. Rebecca's voice was concerned. Elena, you sound terrible. Are you okay? I'm fine. But I need you to come to Chile. I can't discuss this over the phone. And I can't leave my research site right now. Please, Rebecca. This is the most important thing either of us will ever deal with. Something in Elena's voice convinced Rebecca to make the trip. 2 days later, she arrived at the research station, expecting to hear about some archaeological discovery. Instead, Elena led her to the mining tunnel where Kethmer was waiting. Rebecca's reaction was exactly what Elena had expected. She stood frozen for a full minute, then slowly sat down on a rock without taking her eyes off the alien. This is real, she whispered. This is actually real. For the next several hours, Elena, David, and Kethmer explained everything to Rebecca. They showed her the alien technology, the recordings of the fleet, and the evidence of years of secret observation of Earth. Rebecca asked dozens of questions, approaching the situation like the scientist she was. We need to tell the world, Rebecca said. Finally, this is too big to keep secret, but Elena had been thinking about this for days. If we announce this publicly, what do you think will happen? Rebecca considered the question. Panic, probably. Mass hysteria. Religious groups claiming it's the end times. Governments trying to cover it up or use it for their own purposes. Exactly. Elena said, and while everyone is running around in panic, the alien scouts arrive and see a planet in chaos. That won't help humanity pass whatever tests they have planned. David agreed. We need to be smarter about this, find the right people, build a small group who can actually do something useful. Rebecca understood. Through her work with NASA, she had connections with space agencies around the world. More importantly, she knew military officials who specialized in aerospace defense and scientists who could understand alien technology. Over the next week, Rebecca carefully reached out to 5 people she trusted completely. General Patricia Hayes from the U.S. Space Force was the first to join their secret group. She was followed by Dr. James Mitchell from the European Space Agency, Dr. Lisa Wang from China's space program, Professor Robert Anderson from Australia's Defense Research Department, and Dr. Fatima Al-Rashid from the UAE Space Technology Center. The meeting took place at a secure facility in Nevada. Elena was terrified as she walked into a room full of military and government officials. These were people who could have her arrested or make her disappear if they thought she was a threat to national security. But Kethmer's presence changed everything. When the alien demonstrated its technology and shared the recordings from its ship, even the most skeptical officials had to accept the truth. General Hayes was the first to speak after the presentation. If this is accurate, we have less than a month before the first scout ships arrive in our solar system. That's not enough time to build any meaningful defense. Dr. Wang was studying the technical specifications Kethmer had provided. Some of this technology is centuries ahead of our current capabilities. Even if we started building immediately, we need years to create anything useful. Elena felt her heart sinking. She had hoped that bringing the world's best scientists and military leaders together would lead to solutions, but they seemed just as overwhelmed as she felt. Then Dr. Al-Rashid asked a question that changed the direction of their planning. Kethmer, you mentioned that some of your people disagree with the invasion plan. How many are we talking about? Kethmer's response was encouraging. Approximately 30% of the fleet had reservations about the mission. These individuals weren't openly rebellious, but they could potentially be convinced to change sides if they saw evidence that humans could be trusted as equals rather than subjects. So we don't need to fight the entire alien fleet, General Hayes said thoughtfully. We just need to convince enough of them that humanity deserves a chance. This led to a completely different strategy. Instead of trying to build weapons to fight the aliens, they would focus on demonstrating humanity's best qualities. They would prepare a presentation that showed human achievements in science, art, cooperation, and peaceful problem-solving. But they also needed to be ready for the possibility that diplomacy would fail. Dr. Mitchell suggested creating a network of hidden facilities around the world where human knowledge and culture could be preserved. If the worst happened, Elena found herself at the center of planning that involved the most powerful people on Earth. It was overwhelming and exciting at the same time. But she was also worried about Kethmer. The alien was taking enormous risks by helping humanity, and if its people discovered what it was doing, the consequences would be severe. Kethmer seemed to understand her concerns. Through their mental connection, it assured Elena that it had made peace with its decision. Some choices are worth the risk, its thoughts conveyed. Your species deserves a chance to prove itself. The group worked frantically for 3 days, developing a plan that balanced diplomacy with preparation for conflict. They would attempt to make contact with sympathetic aliens in the fleet, while secretly building defensive capabilities using Kethmer's technology. The most dangerous part of the plan involved Elena directly. She would need to accompany Kethmer when it attempted to contact its allies in the fleet. The alien ship was too damaged to reach space, but the group's resources could provide a way to send long-range communications. Elena was terrified by this responsibility, but she knew she was the only human who could communicate directly with Kethmer's people. The mental connection she shared with the alien could potentially be extended to others of its species. As the meeting concluded, Elena realized how much her life had changed. A month ago, she was a quiet archaeologist studying ancient pottery. In the desert, Now she was part of a secret international committee planning humanity's first diplomatic contact. With an alien civilization, General Hayes pulled Elena aside as the group prepared to leave. "I want you to know that what you've done, helping this alien and bringing this information to us, could save millions of lives, maybe billions." Elena appreciated the recognition, but she was also realistic about the challenges ahead. "We still don't know if any of this will work. The scouts could arrive tomorrow and decide humanity is too dangerous to preserve." "Maybe," General Hayes agreed, "but at least now we have a chance. A month ago, we would have been completely helpless. Now we have an ally, advanced technology, and a plan. That's more than most species get when they face their first contact with a superior civilization." As Elena drove back to her research station, she thought about the enormous responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. In a few weeks, she would attempt to speak for all of humanity to beings from another world. The words she chose and the impression she made could determine whether human civilization continued to exist. But she wasn't facing this challenge alone anymore. She had David's scientific expertise, Rebecca's connections, Kethmer's knowledge, and the support of some of the most capable people on Earth. Together, they had a real chance to change the course of history. The final test was coming, and Elena was as ready as she could possibly be. The fate of two worlds would soon be decided by the choices made in the next few days. The moment Elena had been dreading finally arrived on a Tuesday morning. Kethmer's long-range sensors detected the alien fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel. At the edge of the solar system, the ships were massive, some larger than entire cities, and there were more of them than anyone had expected. Elena was in the secure facility in Nevada when the alerts started coming in. Telescopes around the world were picking up the alien signatures, and governments were scrambling to understand what they were seeing. But Elena's secret group already knew exactly what was happening. "They're early," Dr. Wong said. "Studying the sensor readings, we thought we had another week to prepare." General Hayes was coordinating with military forces around the world. "All defense systems are on standby, but we're not making any aggressive moves. We stick to the plan." Elena felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Everything they had worked for during the past month came down to the next few hours. Either humanity would successfully negotiate with the alien fleet, or they would face forced relocation to distant worlds. Kethmer was connected to a powerful communication array that the team had built using alien technology. The device could send messages across the solar system instantly, allowing real-time conversation with the fleet commanders. "Are you ready?" Elena asked the alien. Kethmer's mental response was calm but determined. "As ready as I can be. Remember, you speak not just for yourself, but for your entire species. Choose your words carefully." Elena took a deep breath and activated the communication system. Within seconds, she was connected to the flagship of the alien fleet. The mental contact was different from her communication with Kethmer. These alien minds felt colder, more distant, and filled with a sense of absolute authority. "I am Fleet Commander Zethara." The thoughts reached Elena's mind. "You harbor a traitor to our people. Return Kethmer to us immediately, and we will proceed with the evaluation as planned." Elena had practiced this moment dozens of times, but actually facing the alien commander was terrifying. "I am Elena Rodriguez, speaking for the people of Earth. Kethmer is here by choice, and it has shown us that cooperation between our species is possible." Cooperation. Commander Zethara's thoughts carried a mix of amusement and irritation. "Your species cannot even cooperate with itself. You wage wars, destroy your environment, and create weapons capable of eliminating all life on your planet. What possible benefit could we gain from cooperating with such a primitive civilization?" Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We may have problems, but we also have achievements. We create art, music, and literature. We explore space and try to understand the universe. We're capable of growth and change." "Prove it," came the immediate response. This was the moment Elena's team had been preparing for. Over the past month, they had compiled a comprehensive presentation showing humanity's greatest achievements, art from every culture, scientific discoveries, acts of compassion and cooperation, and evidence of humanity's potential for positive growth. But as Elena began sharing these images with the alien commander, she could feel skepticism and dismissal in the mental connection. Commander Zethara was not impressed by human accomplishments. These are the actions of a young species. The commander's thoughts continued. Interesting. Perhaps, but not evidence of readiness for independence. You will be relocated to worlds where you can be properly guided and supervised. Elena felt desperation rising in her chest. You're not giving us a fair chance. You've already decided our fate before hearing what we have to say. The evaluation is complete. Commander Zethar responded coldly. Your ships will arrive at your major population centers within 72 hours. Prepare your people for relocation. But then something unexpected happened. A new voice entered the mental conversation. Commander, I respectfully disagree with your assessment. Elena felt Kethmer surprise through their connection. The new speaker was Fleet Admiral Verdon, one of the highest-ranking officials in the alien hierarchy. Admiral, Commander Zethara's thoughts carried clear irritation. The evaluation protocols are clear. This species shows too many signs of primitive aggression to be granted independence. The protocols were designed for species that had no prior contact with our people, Admiral Verdon replied. This situation is different. These humans have demonstrated the wisdom to help one of our own, even at great personal risk. That shows a level of moral development that deserves consideration. Elena realized that Kethmer's plan was working. The aliens who had doubts about the invasion were beginning to speak up. More voices joined the conversation. Captain Helivana of the Science Division pointed out that humans had shown remarkable adaptability in understanding alien technology. Commander Nexos of the Cultural Analysis Team noted that human art and music showed a level of creativity that was rare among young civilizations. A debate was raging within the alien fleet, broadcast directly into Elena's mind. She listened as beings from another world argued about the fate of humanity. Some, like Commander Zethara, insisted that humans were too dangerous to be left unsupervised. Others argued that humanity showed promise that deserved to be nurtured, rather than controlled. The debate continued for hours. Elena found herself mentally exhausted from maintaining the connection with so many alien minds at once. But she forced herself to stay focused, occasionally adding information or answering questions about human culture and capabilities. Finally, Admiral Verdon called for a formal vote among the fleet's senior officers. Elena held her breath. As the results came in, the vote was incredibly close, but the faction favoring giving humanity a chance won by a narrow margin. Very well, Admiral Verdon's thoughts reached Elena. Humanity will be granted a probationary period of independence. We will establish a monitoring station in your outer solar system. If your species shows continued progress toward peaceful cooperation and environmental responsibility over the next 50 Earth years, you will be granted full independence. If you fail to meet these standards, relocation will proceed as originally planned. Elena felt relief washing over her, but she also realized that this was only a partial victory. Humanity had earned time, but they would have to prove themselves worthy of true freedom. Commander Zethara was clearly unhappy with the decision. This is a mistake, Admiral. This species will disappoint you, just as so many others have. But Admiral Verdon seemed confident in the choice, perhaps. But they have earned the right to try. As the communication ended, Elena collapsed into a chair, emotionally drained but victorious. Round the room, the team members were celebrating. But Elena felt the weight of what came next. 50 years, she said to Kethmer. We have 50 years to prove that humanity deserves to remain on Earth. Kethmer's mental response was filled with both hope and determination. It's more than most species receive when they encounter a superior civilization. Your people have been given a precious gift, the chance to grow and change on their own terms. General Hayes was already planning the next steps. We'll need to establish communication protocols with the monitoring station, and we'll have to decide how much of this to reveal to the world's governments. Elena realized that her role in this historic moment was far from over. She would likely spend the rest of her life helping to coordinate the relationship between humans and their alien observers. It was a responsibility she had never asked for, but one she was determined to fulfill. As she looked around the room at her colleagues, Elena felt pride in what they had accomplished. A small group of humans and one alien refugee had managed to change the course of history. They had given humanity something that no previous civilization in this situation had ever received. A second chance. The real work was just beginning. Humanity would need to prove that they could overcome their differences, protect their environment, and develop into the kind of species that deserved to remain free. But for the first time since this incredible journey began, Elena felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Kethmer would remain on Earth as a liaison between the two species, helping to bridge the gap between human and alien understanding. Elena smiled as she realized that the injured refugee she had found in the desert had become something much more important: a friend, a teacher, and a symbol of what was possible when different species chose cooperation over conflict. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic citizenship had begun.